You have a long history with the city of Amsterdam. Could you tell us a little about what draws you to the city and what effect it's had on you?
I've been working with the orchestra now for about 25 years, but and that started in the mid-90s, 1990s. But my history with the city goes much further back. I spent 2 fabulous years as a student with the Concertmeester orchestra. These were the last two or three years of Meister Haitink with the orchestra. I was very lucky that I had opportunities to conduct when I was very young. I wanted to be in a city that had one of the best orchestras in the world, with one of the best concert halls in the world. I had friends that graduated university in Toronto that in the 1970s there were a lot of Dutch cities that were starting symphony orchestras, and a half dozen of my friends found jobs with these orchestras. And so, and one of my dearest friends, Steve Dan, was principal violist of the Concertmeester Orchestra. So a lot of things happened at the same time, and I wrote to Meister Haitink and I asked him if I could come and just sit in rehearsal, study scores, see how the orchestra functioned, how they worked, see all the guest conductors come in. And they were two of the happiest times of my life, because during those years, Carlos Kleiber came, Chick Corea and Frederick Goulda came, and they did a piano concerto. It was just such a wonderful time to be in Amsterdam. And the feeling of the city always was one of tolerance and diversity, where individual thought and differences was respected.
And your role as conductor, it's, of course, you're the communication point between the dancers and between the orchestra, and we have obviously different needs. How do you balance that? How do you work with that?
I think it always starts with the music. You try to have a plan for how you want to move through a piece, either one set number or a series of numbers or the whole ballet. And you try to set parameters for tempi that you would like, knowing full well what the technical demands of certain steps are, because certain steps that only function within certain tempi. Yeah. Those parameters, yet at the same time establishing a certain proportion in the way you shape the music. For a dancer, for example, they often ask, can you do this a bit faster? Can you do this a bit slower? And for a dancer, that means maybe 3 or 4 metronome markings. But for a musician, when you do this a bit faster, a bit slower, they actually think it's a change in the feel of the music. I try to explain, I say, yes, we can do that, but all the proportions change, and everything becomes faster or everything becomes slower.
Natural rhythm of the music gets destroyed, exactly.
Yeah. And it isn't as if tempi are absolutely cast in stone for dancers, because depending on the dancer, you have a lot of possibility for shaping the tempi and the music. If you have, for example, a dancer who is at the top of their game, unbelievable technique, special musicality, always listening to hear what the orchestra provides as far as accompaniment. You have a huge area that you can play the music. On the other hand, if you have, let's say, a dancer who's doing the role for the very first time, perhaps not the top level of technical proficiency, who is unsure, or a dancer who's injured, then the possibilities become much smaller. But within that zone, you still have the possibility to shape the music.
Yeah, so you would have to be very sensitive to the abilities of each dancer.
Yeah, I sit at the piano and you see a certain dancer, and in about 5 minutes, I already know what the possibilities are for that dancer. If they tend to be tall and move slow. On the other hand, if someone is shorter, is a powerhouse, moves quickly, and prepares on the music, then the tempi, then it's another kind of dancer. Yeah. But because sometimes, I have to go into a performance with no rehearsal with the orchestra, perhaps a piano run-through with the dancers on stage, and you automatically have to have a feeling for what that dancer needs. Yeah. And at the same time, you may rehearse something a certain way, but come the performance, something happens on stage where they turn or have problems in turning in a manege, or at the end of a musical number they do extra pirouettes and you have to slow the orchestra down. You have to have a certain command over the orchestra to allow split-second changes in the performance while you're doing it.
And the orchestra needs to trust you.
To do it.
You need to trust the orchestra that you can do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a unique skill. Well, I have to say that we love to have you, and it's an absolute pleasure to work with you, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to come back, especially after these COVID years,
Yes.
and to see the orchestra in such great shape. I mean, I'm thrilled with the way the orchestra is playing, and there's a spirit of togetherness and unity that I'm very happy to see.
Right, thank you.